The Phoenix Suns versus the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to be a very compelling series. I think this has all the ingredients to be a very entertaining series. You have marquee stars on both ends of the court. For the Suns, you have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, you have Bradley Beal, and for the Timberwolves, you got young rising star who wants to be the face of the league in Anthony Edwards. You have Cat, who's been established for a while, and I would say Gobert is more like a defensive star if you look at his history of winning Defensive Player of the Year. So this will be a very interesting matchup to see how it plays out. I know some people will say the Suns will easily win this series. They swept them during the regular season series. They won every game by double digits, so they shouldn't struggle with this team. I know that'll be the argument, but I'll say this. I do believe Minnesota has a chance to win this series. I actually think they're going to win this series. So one thing I'll say Minnesota has going for themselves is that they're the number one team in defense. They led the league in defense when it comes to opponents' points per game. They were number one in that. The Suns were 13th, so you could say basically Suns are a middle of the pack team defensively. The one thing I noticed about the box scores when looking at them, they don't really tell the whole entire story about this matchup because the first time when they met was really early in the year. And I don't really take those matchups that seriously when they're that early because a lot of things can go in that situation. Cat had a great game against them in the first matchup, and then he didn't play in the second one. He wasn't there. Then in the third one, I feel that was like his first or second game back. So he played terrible in the last matchup with them, but I think you throw that game out of the window since he's trying to get back into game shape. I think he'll be much better than what he displayed in the game last week when he just only scored, I think, 7 or 8 points. Now, the closest game the Timberwolves had with the Suns was a few weeks back when they lost only by 10. It was like 97-87, so respectable, but they still lost. The other thing I'm going to say that I looked into the box scores of the previous matchups and the trends, I would say in the first two games of this matchup, first 2 out of 3 games of this matchup, Kevin Durant shot great from the field. He shot something like above 60% in the first 2 games versus the Timberwolves this year. In the last game, he was terrible. Now, Devin Booker, he played great in the first matchup versus the Timberwolves. And then the next 2 games, he's been complete crap when it comes to his shooting. He shot really poorly. Bradley Beal only got to play in 2 games versus the Timberwolves this year, and he shot great in both of the matchups, so he could definitely be a problem. But I think the Timberwolves have figured out how to contain Booker. They have done it 2 straight times now. They might be on to something with Kevin Durant based on the last game. They were able to contain both him and Booker, but Bradley Beal went off for a great explosion that was able to offset both of those guys playing poorly. So I think the Timberwolves are going to figure out eventually, by trial and error, they're going to figure out what will work in containing these guys. You're not going to shut down all 3 of them, obviously, but I think they'll figure out a formula that will work to limit 2 out of 3 of those guys and dare the rest of the team to beat them. I definitely believe they'll figure it out. Just they're a great defensive team. Gobert has been great this year. Jaden has been awesome for the Timberwolves. So I definitely think they should be able to figure it out, but it's going to come down to Anthony Edwards. I really do believe that. I've looked at the box scores for all 3 of these matchups, and he's been complete shit in these matchups. This is a series where Anthony Edwards, I feel, needs to step up and show to people that he could possibly be one of the future faces of the league. I would think as a competitor, he would take this personal, and he'll be determined to bring his A game in this matchup. He should have a lot of motivation since the Timberwolves haven't gotten out of the first round in 20 years. He's playing against what I would say is the old guard in Kevin Durant. This could be a passing the torch moment. So as a young guy, you would think he's hungry, but I think it really hinges on him more than any player on the Timberwolves for them to win this series, that he has to play much, much better than what he's played in during the regular season. He should at least get his regular season numbers against the Suns. So it's going to really come down to him. I strongly believe that. And this series to me will also be Kevin Durant's last stand. This is probably the last time he can go for a championship run. He's not young anymore. He still has some juice left in the tank, but it's not guaranteed next year he'll be able to go on a big run in the playoffs. Just with his age, you just never know what can happen. I am looking forward to seeing how this series plays out, how these teams make adjustments. That's going to be very interesting. I believe the Timberwolves will figure it out after a few games on what works and what doesn't against the Suns. And they'll beat the Suns in, I'm going to say, 6 games. That's my prediction. Timberwolves in 6 games against the Suns.